Well, first, I just wanted an alternative to crumbling cash and crumbling credit. I just wanted the number not to go down. Like most people don't think their number goes down when they're holding dollars, but once you understand the inflation rate, you realize your purchasing power is going down if you're not keeping up with the cost of capital. And so your wealth is being destroyed. So first, I just wanted the number not to go down. I wanted to preserve wealth. And then we realized that it was a high quality property. I think the epiphany comes when you realize that it's the dominant digital property network, and digital property is better than physical property in every way conceivable. So if I theoretically designed digital property, I want to store $1 billion. I want to hold it in the palm of my hand, move it at the speed of light, vibrate it 1 million times a second. I want it to last forever. I want immortal, indestructible, infinite, all-powerful, programmable energy, right? Matter is energy. Energy is matter. I can convert energy. I could take $1 billion and turn it into a building. I could, in theory, turn a building back into $1 billion. I can buy $1 billion worth of electricity. I could buy $1 billion worth of guns, whatever it is you want to do, right? That, money is ultimately monetary energy, and you can convert it into any kind of product or service or property. It's the apex. Once you realize that Bitcoin is digital property or digital money or digital energy, all of these things, then it becomes clear that everything else you could possibly own is inferior to that, right? You would really never want to own anything other than pure digital energy, right? Like why do you want to own a building, right? The only reason you want to own a building is you're going to freeze to death if you didn't have something to come in from the cold too, right? Like you would own a building to live in because otherwise you're going to freeze to death. Okay, that's a good reason. But with all your discretionary energy beyond that, if you chose to own a 50-story skyscraper in Manhattan, is that as good as digital? No, because the mayor of Manhattan can seize your building by eminent domain. If you're thinking you're going to rent the building out, the politician can tell you that you're not allowed to evict any of your tenants, even though they don't pay you, right? So the property in the physical realm can be impaired by any political jurisdiction, anyone with jurisdiction over the property. And that means the neighborhood review board, right? The neighborhood building committee can tell you can't put an awning in front of your building. The mayor, the governor, every regulator, OSHA, environmental review boards, the Congress, the Senate, the White House, everybody in that physical domain can impair the value of your property. So not only that, it's going to be impaired. The second is it's going to be taxed, right? Because when they decide to tax your building, you can't move your building. And the third is the building is not appealing to anybody else in the universe. Like if I'm a billionaire in Beijing, why would I want a skyscraper in Manhattan? If it's illegal for me to travel to Manhattan, why would I want to pay for that thing? So if you have $1 billion of property in Manhattan, it's not fungible and it's not desirable everywhere else on Earth. What I want is something that is universally desirable through all space-time. How desirable will your building be in 500 years, right? Buildings, not, right? And so there's another interesting dynamic here with physical property. There's a maintenance cost. The cost of maintenance is the theoretical investment every year you have to make in order to preserve the property value. If you ever own a boat, you know what that is. Stop investing in the boat sinks. If you own a building, like what's the useful life of a building? 40 years, 80 years, 100 years? Show me a building in Manhattan that's still good 200 years later, still desirable. So property in the physical domain doesn't hold its value through time, and it doesn't hold its value through space. And it's not fungible, right? The Rockefeller Center is not the same thing as 1,000 acres in Kansas. They're different things. The Rockefeller Center is not even the same thing as another big building in Manhattan. Whereas a Bitcoin is the same as a Bitcoin. And we're back to your issue. Like, where do you get rid of volatility? One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, and it means the same thing. Whether or not, what is one Bitcoin? 1/21 millionth of all the energy in the network. And what is it going to be in 1,000 years? 1/21 millionth of all the energy in the network. Okay, who's that interesting to? Everybody that joins the network. Who can join the network? It's open, permissionless. Anybody on Earth can join the network. Okay, so is that everybody? Well, not everybody, because some people haven't joined the network, but it is more inclusive than any other thing, any other property network. A building in Manhattan is interesting to people that do business in Manhattan. Land in the US is interesting to people that can traverse or do business in the US. A Picasso is interesting property to people who appreciate Picassos, right? I mean, presumably a lot of people do, but not everyone does, right? So if you look at all the other things you can own, gold has value to people that value gold. Why Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is the most universally desirable property in space and time. It's the property with the lowest maintenance cost. You could put $1 billion of Bitcoin in cold storage and you don't have to pay 2% a year to maintain it, or 5% a year, or 10% a year. The maintenance cost on a boat is 10% a year. The maintenance cost on a building is 3% a year. The maintenance cost on fill in the blank, you know, pay to store your gold, pay to store your artwork, pay to store your whatever it is. There's a cost. You own a company. Well, there's a cost to own a company. You actually get diluted by the CEO or the executive team when they issue stock options. You know, if the company didn't have any employees, right, and didn't have any cost, then maybe there wouldn't be as much maintenance. But, you know, what do you call a company that has no employees and no maintenance costs? Well, Bitcoin, like it becomes something else. So I think that when you embrace Bitcoin as your property strategy, you can get away from the maintenance cost. The likelihood is going to be impaired, decreases exponentially. It's a lot harder to seize $1 billion of Bitcoin than it is to seize $1 billion of land, or $1 billion of art, or $1 billion of gold, or $1 billion of a building, or $1 billion of stock. Exponentially harder. If I have $1 billion in a bank, it's easy to seize $1 billion in a bank. If I wanted to take all the money from everybody in Argentina, I could do it overnight if it was sitting in cash or credit. But if I wanted to seize all the money from everybody in Argentina and they all used Bitcoin and held their own keys, I would have to incarcerate 70 million people for 90 days, and I'd have to sweat it out of them. So how hard is it to jail 70 million people for 3 months? And how many people do I need to do that? It's very difficult. 1,000 times harder, 1,000,000 times harder, 10 million times, probably 10 million to 100 million times harder to seize the asset than it is to seize cash or credit or securities. Seizing companies and seizing buildings is easy, right? The Cubans seized all the buildings, right? Everybody lost their private property in Cuba when Castro took over. That's simple. It's easy to nationalize an oil company. It's easy to seize all the gold, right? We know how to do that. It's very difficult to seize passwords in people's heads. So I look at Bitcoin and I think, well, it's a universal property. It'll last forever. It's very hard to seize. It's very hard to tax. It's easy to move. And that makes it universally appealing, because on the day you wake up and you find that it's illegal to own Bitcoin in your country, you can either take it with you to another country. Try taking $1 billion of gold to another country with you. Try taking $1 billion of building on the country. So you can either take it with you, or you can send it somewhere, or you can sell it. And so the ability to send it, to take it, or to keep it, or to sell it, all those are 3 rights that you sacrifice when you buy a house, or a building, or land, or securities, or credit, or cash. You don't have those rights, or art, or collectibles, or sports teams, right? Whatever it is you think you have, you don't have property rights with those things. And ultimately, the idea of Bitcoin is nothing, is an elegant 1/21 millionth of all of the value on the network for as long as the network may last. There's nothing more stable, nothing more predictable in the entire financial universe than that, right? That is the single most stable, body in the entire financial universe. If you're looking for something to revolve around, there's nothing more stable.